I am going to beat you into the living death.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with the latest edition of the Living Death Show. I'm very, very, very excited to bring in our guest for today. You've seen her many times on this program. You know her from her work as a contributor with Bloody Elbow, formerly of My MMA News, my old partner on a column there. Welcome, Kristen King. How are you doing?
I'm great. It's been a long time. Every time we get together, it's so much fun. So thank you guys for having me back. I know we got a lot to get to, so I'm pretty excited.
Definitely. I mean, it's always fun just to have you on because you know the sport very well, and I like your opinions on things, especially when we start talking about bloody injuries and stuff. You're really all in there. But this is also a good excuse just to talk to you. So you know, one of my best friends in the industry. So I like to just see how you're doing. So all right, and of course we know the two guys at the bottom of the panel very, very well. Every week they are here, but we introduce them every time because we love them so much. First up is the jack of all trades who has mastered them all, the senior editor of Sherdog.com, also the big homie, Ben Duffy. Ben, what's going on today?
I am doing great. As already stated, it's always a pleasure to have Kristen here, classing the joint up and being the MMA's queen of Ghoulish Gore. Always makes it a very special occasion.
Absolutely. And of course, the man who anchors the panel every week with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers. He is the associate editor of Sherdog.com. Also my good friend, Jay Petrie. What's going on, Jay?
I feel like we're almost gushing a little bit too much, but Kristen King makes this show and not just the Living Death Show, but she takes Just Bleed to another level. So I'm also happy that she's joining us here today. I'm going to ask you guys a question you can answer. The stat of the week, would you like a high number or a low number?
How about a high number?
A high number. The high number is 4,450,400. 4,450,400. What that is if you decided to place a bet on this fight card on the 284 for the four fighters that landed submissions, if you wanted to say that Yair Rodriguez, Jack Della Maddalena, Josh Culibao, and Loma Lookwoodme all hit submissions, $100 bet would pay almost $4.5 million. That's how ridiculously unlikely and wild that was. Nobody placed that bet.
Oh, man.
Of course not.
No.
Damn it.
No.
I would love to have Marty McFly's almanac right now.
Yeah.
That would be perfect for this. All right, so let's go ahead and get to cracking here because we had UFC 284 take place over the weekend. Pound for pound number one versus pound for pound number two, Alexander Volkanovski and Islam Makhachev put on a fantastic main event. The lightweight title still resides with Islam Makhachev. Now, after beating Volkanovski, I mean, a lot of directions we can take this in, and I'm sure we'll all stretch this topic out as far as possible. Is Islam Makhachev now the best MMA fighter in the world?
No. He's in the team photo. I mean, no, he barely beat a visibly smaller fighter. And for what it's worth, I did think he won. I scored it 3-2 for Makhachev, but he barely won a fight against a much smaller fighter, was kind of hanging on for dear life at the end. I don't think he's the best fighter in the world any more than I think it would automatically make Kamaru Usman the best fighter in the world if he beat up Makhachev.
It's the right way to approach it because I agree too. I had Usman as the number one until he lost to Edwards, and then I bumped up Volkanovski because of what he had been doing at 145 is just nothing sort of, historic. Like, it's not even great or spectacular. It's historic, the streak he had at 145 and the opponents he kept beating one after the other. So pound for pound is a nightmare. It's a thing that we could all say what our criteria is for what we think for pound matters, and it'd be different. And that's okay. Because this is a subjective, imaginary, mostly impossible set of rankings The only time it's ever possible is if the two fighters actually fight each other, which happens so rarely. It gives Makhachev a big boost that he happens to have defeated two top 5 pound-for-pound opponents back-to-back in Charles Oliveira and Volkanovski. But a pound-for-pound is the idea that if the fighters weigh the exact same, how would they fare? That's different because you can't quite look at Volkanovski and Makhachev and say, well, they weigh the same. I mean, if it were in California and we could actually know, that'd be great. Just to have that bit of extra information. But no, I think because of the way it turned out, and I kind of said this after he left the promotion, that there's no way I'm going to bump Francis Ngannou from the pound-for-pound list because he is no longer a UFC fighter. Now, I say that knowing where the heck is he going to go to maintain that? What's he going to – he goes to Bellator. He's got Ryan Bader and then Jack Conco. You know, is that a pound for pound type resume? But I still have to give it for him for now because of what he achieved up to that point. It's funny. Makhachev's stock went up by beating Volkanovski, but it also went down because the mystique that people had, you know, the Adriano Martins knockout from a long time ago had kind of dissipated. But now you look at Islam Makhachev and go, oh boy, I see multiple lightweights that have a really good chance against him that a lot of people wouldn't have said before this fight. So no, he's not the best guy in the world for me.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. Honestly, it's hard to kind of say if he is the best. I would certainly give him the credit of being one of the best. Yes, absolutely. That's a no-brainer, obviously. But there's just so many different criteria as to who should be on the top. It's as easy as, oh, well, number one beat number two, so therefore that person should be number one, or, you know, vice versa. It's not always as easy for other people who have different types of criteria. As Jay said, you know, there is if they were equal weight, maybe if they had equal height, size, whatever it is, if they were just like, if this was like create a character in UFC 4 and you could just put these characters together at the exact same weight, height, reach advantage, all that stuff, then maybe you'd have more of an opinion on who could be pound for pound. Then there are people who just take in the entire body of work. They look at Islam's record in the UFC. They said, okay, how did he get to the title fight that he did and all that stuff? And some people may discredit beating Bobby Green, although he is very much a UFC veteran. To go from Bobby Green to Charles Oliveira may not seem that it's not on the same level as someone like Volkanovski, who had to beat like former title challengers before he got to Max Holloway. And then at the time, Max Holloway was considered a pound for pound great. So, you know, it's just, you're trying to come to a conclusion that a lot of people are not coming to, because person A could say it's just as simple as this, or person B could say it's all of this together, or person C could say, well, I believe in the whole idea of pound for pound should just be equal fighters fighting each other and all that stuff. So I can make a Venn diagram and nobody would be in the middle. It's very hard to say that he is the best fighter right now. Certainly has a case for it eventually. And a lot of people would also say, well, how can he be the best? He only has 2 title defenses, you know, and then you compare that to the body of work that Volk has had. It's not on the same level. So it's very hard to say he is 100% the best, but he is definitely one of the best.
And can I add an extra question when you're diving into this? In addition to what your thoughts on if Makhachev is the number one, there are a lot of people that are saying that because Volkanovski moved up, he took the greater risk, he took the chance, he was at the disadvantage in terms of the weight and whatnot. So would that, and the fact that he was right down to the wire, and a handful of people thought that he won that fight. So what do you also think about the argument that no, actually Volkanovski is the better pound for pound fighter because of what he achieved despite his disadvantages?
I'm of two minds of that subject, because first I did score it for Volkanovski. I had to rewatch a little bit because I was doing the live commentary with Dan Tom at the same time, so it was hard to keep score while we were, you know, commenting on the fights. But I did rewatch, and I gave, I want to say 1, 3, and 5 to Volk. Okay. And I think a 48-47 scorecard for either guy is acceptable. Like I'm not going to complain about, you know, if you saw it for Makhachev or not, you know, very close fight. So that's cool. But I do think Volk won. And also, I do think that there's a lot of merit in that argument that Volk took the greater risk and he deserves more weight as far as, ironically, weight for consideration in the pound for pound discussion. It also exposes how silly this conversation is. We're talking about hypotheticals, like they're in the way that they were built. Although they were both 155 pounds the day before the fight, they didn't show up fight night that weight. They're naturally not in the same weight class. They're naturally much different builds and whatnot. And all the pound for pound fighters are. They're all different body types and different skill levels, and outweighs this one in this area and vice versa. So it's kind of a silly discussion to have. It's just a fun one. So we're going to keep having it. Yeah, if all things are equal, then yes, Volkanovski is the better fighter, and I think he proved that on Saturday. But then if you say, okay, if they're the equal size, okay, well, is his takedown defense going to suffer because he's not as short, so his base isn't going to be as low? And there's a million different ways you can look at it. The very simple way says they fought head to head. One guy won, one guy lost. The guy who won should be placed above. But that's almost too simplistic for me in this scenario. That's a little bit too simple.
That work because that works perfectly for divisional rankings,
right? Exactly,
because you're in the same field. But it's not like Demetrius Johnson carrying Henry Cejudo on his back, fighting Francis Ngannou of an equal weight. It's not that kind of situation.
It's that starts. Then we start. That's fight circus territory. We start doing that stuff, and that's not.
Dude,
call us.
I suggested Master Blaster Fighting Championship all the way back in 2018, where you stack like 125, 135 pound on each other.
Banking no money. Just have a MMA asymmetrical vertical.
And you know what? The craziest thing about this conversation about Volkanovski or Makhachev being number one or number two will be completely null and void in less than a month's time. The moment John Jones steps out there and fights, and especially if he runs through Cyril Gane, and even if he doesn't run through him, if he just wins, if he wins by the most narrow of margins and he walks away with a heavyweight title belt, Volkanovski and Makhachev will be long forgotten in our conversations. Absolutely. They will be left in the dust because there will be absolutely nothing stopping anyone of sound mind saying that John Jones is the number one fighter in the world. The only reason why we're not saying that in this conversation right now is he's been inactive for 3 years.
It'll stop me.
Ooh,
like John Jones, unless he beats him a lot worse than Ngannou did, he's not even the number one heavyweight in the world.
But if we're talking pound for pound, there's also someone who dominated at light heavyweight and then replicated championship success at the weight class up. So that is pure pound for pound discussion right there.
I can't remember if maybe you guys can help me with this one. When GSP came back and throttled Bisping, did that? I mean, he was away for a long time, so he was inactive. But
he was away for 3 years.
Do you guys recall if he skyrocketed? Because I don't know. Number one at the time. We can probably check, but I just figured off the top of our heads.
If he wasn't number one, it would have been Jones or DJ.
That's probably right because people
or even Conor at that time,
a weak champion.
Because Conor was double champ at the time, right?
2016, 2017.
Yeah, because he won the belt at 205. Yeah. He didn't relinquish.
It depends on inactivity and so bumping him off the list.
McGregor was probably McGregor and Jones were probably and DJ were in that sphere. But I think with GSP at that time, I think it was more so about his overall legacy because we all figured that he wasn't returning to the sport for the long haul and he wasn't going to be a long-time middleweight champion, that he was going to win, maybe defend it once or twice and then vacate the sport again. So it was more about legacy. And those conversations, not about who's pound for pound number one at the moment. This is a very different thing because these are two guys that are fully in their prime. And depending on how things play out, could very well have years ahead of them to continue competing and continue adding to their legacies, as opposed to a GSP who was essentially out of the door already.
Just to mention, it says GSP skyrocketed to number 3 on the pound for pound list after he beat Michael Bisping.
Aha.
Okay, who was 1 and 2?
Probably Jones and Mighty Mouse. By my guess.
Number 1 was Demetrius Johnson, and number 2 was Conor McGregor.
Oh.
Yeah, Conor McGregor.
Oh, because Jones was out because of the other suspension.
Yeah, Jones is nowhere on this list.
Oh, that's yeah. Yep. Jones was for one of his many
DC head kick.
transgressions.
Yeah.
On Sherdog's pound for pound rankings, Sherdog did the right thing and just dropped Bisping entirely. Did not put GSP into the rankings. December 2017, it was DJ Cormier McGregor.
Wow.
Oh, Cormier, yeah, Cormier, another
because of the expectation that he was going to be a tourist. Whereas, I mean, that is a question, and that's a question that, like for instance, Alexander Volkanovski isn't ranked as a lightweight, right. Even though you could say he was as competitive as anybody's been. Blah blah blah. He should be ranked. It's not the same unless he decided to stick around. It's not like when Jose Aldo went down to 135, fought Marlon Moraes tooth and nail, and was sticking around, so he slotted in at like 7 or 8 or so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. So, Jay, I believe it was you. You've alluded to this a little bit ago, but let's dive a little deeper into that subject matter. If you are in the 155-pound division and you watch UFC 284, how encouraged are you by Volkanovski's success against Makhachev, and who do you think has the best chance of replicating that formula?
You are calling the best wrestlers that are around right now to help drill sprawl against the fence and get up game. Like that is Monday morning, or it's already past Monday morning drilling for the Dariushis of the world. Yeah, it's so strange to me how I was not part of the Makhachev is the indestructible Khabib type. I knew he had deficiencies. I knew he had incredible skills, but I thought we need to see a few more things until we can get there. It's a far cry to say he can run through Drew Dober or rip off Dan Hooker's arm or squish Bobby Green to, well, what's he going to do against insert top 5 name here? I think I need to see one, but I know how it's probably going to go when you see one. Like, in other words, if he fights Chandler, if he fights Connor, if he fights Poirier, if he fights Gaethje and does that thing, he does the takedowns, make your life miserable, Dagestani handcuff, whatever they used to call it, the leg triangle, and mauls them second round submission. He can probably do that to all of them. Like we saw Khabib do that. We saw Khabib keep on doing that against all these guys. Like, well, what if he hits him? But now I have to think some of these fighters are salivating, because Alexander Volkanovski is not known for his power, I guess. He's known for his volume. He's known for his activity. He's known for his accuracy. These guys that are 155, who are the size of Makhachev, can hit him harder and can maybe fight off a takedown attempt and threaten with a knee up the middle or something like that, can get his attention more than Volk did. And if Volkanovski can drop him officially once, I have to think that Poirier and Dariush and Chandler and even Connor and Rafael Fiziev is another one who I'm thinking that can go, oh, wow, this guy isn't just some mysterious monster after all. So I think that the lines will be high, the betting lines will be high in Makhachev's favor, but I might prime pick plus money for any of them when they fight Makhachev next.
I fall on the opposite side of this one. I thought both Volkanovski and Makhachev, they both came off looking pretty good. Like Volkanovski came off looking really good, but I don't know that he laid down a blueprint for being competitive with Makhachev that anyone in the lightweight top 10 is going, oh, dude, I could do that. I mean, they might be thinking it, but the only other person that's had even remotely the same level of competitiveness with Makhachev on the ground is Arman Sarukian, who's another lifelong wrestler. You don't just bring Kyle Dake to your camp for 6 months and come out able to do that. You know, Alexander Volkanovski, one, is a special athlete. Two, was like, you know, an Australian national wrestling champion. I don't think Dariush or even Gaethje, whose wrestling is extremely atrophied by disuse, is just automatically going to be able to do that. And similarly, yeah, Makhachev broke Volkanovski's 22 fight win streak, but it wasn't something where Yair Rodriguez was sitting backstage taking notes, because that involved zero things that Yair Rodriguez has shown himself able to do. Like with Rodriguez versus Volkanovski, it's head kick or bust. It's just, don't get my ass kicked too bad and look for that one opening, you know, at some point during the fight and zombie the guy. That's it. So yeah, I don't know that it should give a whole lot of hope to the rest of the contenders in their respective divisions.
If I could add just one thing real quick, I look at what was a fight that was supposed to happen several years ago, Dos Anjos versus Makhachev, and I would have thought that Makhachev would have done bad things to him. Now, after seeing this fight, I think Dos Anjos might that's a coin flip fight now. Now Dos Anjos is older and more wear on him. But my point is I have changed my opinion on how I thought things would play out for Makhachev because of this performance. I don't know if that's wrong, but I'm okay with it.
No, that sounds reasonable. Like, it's changed my expectations of what is possible with some of the guys that are ranked high enough to be considered for a title shot. I particularly look at Michael Chandler and Dustin Poirier as the ones that stand out to me from a strategic standpoint. Will have the best opportunity. I think especially someone like Poirier, who is seamlessly kind of goes into grappling and striking mode. Like he doesn't really have that switch in between, or that delay between disciplines. He's someone who has fought his fair share of wrestlers and has been able, for the most part, to handle himself quite well. Who's well versed off of his back as well, and he can at least threaten with something that could initiate a scramble. He's great at initiating scrambles, but then on top of that, he hits much harder and has hand speed. So, you know, I'd like to think that if he were able to land some of those same counters that Volkanovski hit, it's going to mean a lot more, especially the body work, especially the body work. That would be essential to kind of wearing Makhachev down.
The leg kicks too, by the way.
Leg kicks. I mean, this is a guy who outkicked Jess and Gaethje when they fought head to head. So I think Poirier has a good shot. I think Michael Chandler does as well. It's just that he gets into his I want to fight like a knucklehead mode. If he turned that part of his brain off, or turn that part of his brain on, maybe probably a better way to phrase it. I think he has a good shot. But I hate to say it. Him fighting like a knucklehead probably won't bode well against McGregor, depending on what version of McGregor we get. If McGregor goes out there and does what he can do against Michael Chandler, fighting like a bonehead, you know who's going to get the next title shot.
Makhachev by second round arm triangle.
But it's going to happen. It's going to happen, and we will have to face that reality. And maybe Khabib comes out of coaching retirement for this one, and you and Jay, you sort of get your wish of Khabib coming out of retirement in some degree. But Kristen, sorry if I stepped on your toes at all. Who out of the guys in the lightweight division that are in consideration for a title shot, who do you think has the best opportunity based on what you saw Saturday?
First of all, I just have to say that I completely back everything that Ben said, because I am very much in the same mindset. It's like, you could have a set of instructions, but it doesn't mean that you're going to follow those instructions. Of course, everyone is looking at that performance like, oh, I can beat that guy. It's the same way that everyone looked at Alex Volkanovski when he beat Israel Adesanya. There were moments in that fight where people were just like, I could take advantage of those holes easily. But it's a different story when you get into the fight. So I recognize that a lot of the lightweights are probably looking at Islam Makhachev right now and are just like, okay, he is beatable. 1000%. He looks way more human than I think a lot of people would have thought heading into that fight. I also agree with Jay. I didn't want to give no chance to Volk, but based off of the performances and stuff like that, it was just too much of a well, I don't know if this is going to play in his favor based off how I've seen Islam. I was surprised a little bit just how competitive it was. And then when I look at the rest of the division, I'm like, yeah, there's some people that could certainly give him a run for his money. But if I were to put my hand on one of them, I want to give it to Beneil Dariush. Obviously, I think he deserves a title shot at this point. I feel like he's beaten a lot of people, and it shouldn't take this long for him to get it. But we've seen it happen before where you got to go on 10, 11, 12 fight win streaks even just to get an opportunity, just to get a foot in the door when it comes to that title run. But I think I would trust him a little bit more in a fight against Islam, just because I really do like his grappling. And Beneil Dariush surprises the hell out of me every time I see him strike. In the Mateus Gamrot fight, I'm not going to lie, I picked Gamrot to win because I thought he was a little bit slicker in the striking. Beneil Dariush is dropping him. And I was like, no way. And I think at that point, my mind switched from, okay, he has the striking, he has the grappling. Like, he could give some real problems to Islam Makhachev. And it seems like everybody over at AKA agrees that he should be next in line for a title shot. So based off of Islam's performance and based off of the run that Beneil has had, I would give it to him. Of course, there is a rumor that he's going to be fighting Charles Oliveira next, which is probably a potential number one contender, because I think Oliveira,
beautiful fight,
right? I love that fight, and it should have happened a long time ago. It really should have. I would have loved to have seen Beneil in there when Charles was the champion, but now we get that fight, or we may be getting that fight, and then I'm going to assume that person should be the number one contender. But as you guys have stated, there's Chandler and McGregor down the line. We don't know when Poirier is coming back, but when he does, I'm sure he's going to get a big fight. So there's a lot of moving pieces in the lightweight division, but right now the one that I think will put on a really good performance against Islam is Beneil Dariush.
I like Dariush as far as a skill matchup. I just always have a hard time having faith in him, despite the fact that he has these incredible performances time after time, and he keeps proving me wrong. It's just like every fight he gets cracked really good. And against a guy like Makhachev, it's like you get cracked really good, he's probably going to rip a limb off at that point. Like he's probably going to snatch your neck or something. So I always hesitate with Dariush. Dariush is like the last fighter I'm ever going to bet on, because it's just going to be some sort of heart attack. Like I'm going to have some sort of cardiac episode as I'm looking at my bank account. No, I'll pass.
But am I allowed to pose a question to the group?
I thought you were going to say, can I curse? I was like, of course. Fuck it.
No, I know I can curse. I know I could do that.
That's the spirit.
My question to you guys, going into this fight, everyone was making a big deal out of Islam striking and saying it is much better than we give credit. Do you guys feel like his striking is on par with his wrestling at this point? Was there any surprises when it came to the stand-up that you saw from Islam Makhachev against Alexander Volkanovski?
I think the biggest surprise for me were the collisions, because those moments, those little car crashes, whatever people like to call them, that's one of the expressions. He had the upper hand almost every time. And I was actually surprised by that, because I expected that Volkanovski would have the hand speed to do it. And he did, but he didn't have the power to match that. Volkanovski didn't. So even though Volkanovski would land a little quicker, Makhachev would hit a little harder. So I think that was my biggest takeaway of that fight, of that type of thing, was actually, I mean, I don't want to denigrate what Makhachev did. I mean, I sound like I'm crapping all over it.
Yep,
he beat Volkanovski.
And it was a fantastic performance.
48-47. He did exactly the right thing. Volkanovski did about the best possible game plan he did. Like, I think of it like when Robert Whittaker fought Izzy the second time, had the perfect game plan, implemented everything exactly the best way he could have done it. Basically, I ended up scoring the fight for Whittaker by a whisker. I understand that Izzy, the argument for Izzy to win, and he did win. So it was like that. It was like Volkanovski. If they rematched in 3 months, I would say the same kind of thing that would happen. So I don't know if it's that level, but it was vastly improved to what it had been in the last like 5 fights, which that's pretty scary.
I'd say what I noticed that was the biggest surprise, and I guess looking back at the Oliveira fight, there was an opportunity for him to show an understanding of it. And I saw a misunderstanding of it a lot Saturday, and that's understanding your range. I think he wasn't. There were times where he thought he was closer than he was. He thought Volkanovski was further away, and it was. I think a lot of those times he was getting hit. It was because he just didn't understand how close or how far Volkanovski was at the time and how fast he could close distance. With Oliveira, they were in each other's faces the whole time, so there was no opportunity for that.
Would you like to know why? I believe I can attest to why.
Oh, please.
Volkanovski is considerably shorter, had an inch longer in the reach.
Yeah, and that's something
even,
that gave
even though he was
trouble.
punching up a little bit and the angle might take something off of it, I don't think Makhachev prepared for a guy of his reach.
I will say this: I've sparred. I can think of one guy in particular that I used to spar on a regular basis who, by looking at his body dimensions just before you get in the ring with him and everything, just seeing how his stature, you don't realize how long his arms are. But as you're fading away and he's throwing a winging hook, you realize how long his arms are. And I think Volkanovski certainly has that effect on a lot of people. It definitely played out in the Holloway fights. That's something that Holloway never really got a handle on, in my opinion. But I think Makhachev, and this will improve over time, I believe, with the right coaching. It's something that Khabib had that a lot of grapplers who aren't necessarily the best technical strikers really lack. And that's having the right striking style to fit their grappling style. Where they, if you are a particular type of wrestler, you prefer certain takedowns and setups, there are certain types of striking that just don't fit you. I always point to King Mo as the best example of this. When King Mo, with his style of wrestling, when he started a lot of his boxing training with the Mayweathers, we saw a dip in his career. We saw a dip in like his effectiveness because he tried to pair this like slick, defense heavy boxing style with a wrestling game that's dominated by power. And the two just don't pair well with one another. Khabib had a great understanding of that. Khabib knew that while he wasn't necessarily going to beat you in a pure K1 match, he knew just the right things to throw to set up all the right things he wanted to do as far as the takedown was concerned. Makhachev doesn't have that understanding just yet, or at least that instinct just yet. Once that's crafted, that makes him a lot more dangerous. But I think that was the biggest flaw I saw with his striking on Saturday.
Yeah, the two dynamics that came out of it to me were how Volkanovski made adjustments throughout the fight to make the takedown more and more difficult for Makhachev. Because first takedown came pretty easy for Makhachev, but they became progressively harder and harder as Volkanovski made tiny adjustments in between rounds. But on the other side, Volkanovski never got truly comfortable or got into his accustomed groove on the feet. We're talking about a guy that in all of his other UFC fights, really things worked off with the jab and the low kick. And he never got either of them really, really uncorked against Makhachev. And I'm not sure why. He's fought southpaws before. He's fought guys with, that are much taller than him before. I mean, hell, Max Holloway is taller than Makhachev and similarly has a little bit shorter reach than you would expect for such a tall guy. And Holloway, of course, famously constantly switches stances. And nonetheless, Volkanovski got his jab going much better against Holloway every time. But with Makhachev, just for some reason, he was really vulnerable to Makhachev's right coming right back over his left. And, after the first couple rounds, those really dried up for him. He stopped throwing it nearly as much. It's understandable why, he maybe didn't throw as many kicks as usual, just, giving away takedowns. But yeah, both guys just came in with really good game plans and pursued them to near perfection. Like the one real tactical mistake Volkanovski did, conceding a takedown near the fence in the fourth round, cost him the whole round. That was it. Yeah. One tiny mistake and potentially the fight turned on it.
Yeah. Man, I just can't get over how great of a fight that was from, like, I've said this a lot to Dan Tom on Saturday, but we have these collection of fights that we like because of the violence in them. Like you think of Rory McDonald and Robbie Lawler's rematch, and like it was a fun fight because they're just beating the hell out of each other and there's blood splatter everywhere and it's just this gory mess. But then there's those fights that are they stand out because it's the most exquisite technique. It is it is everyone performing at the highest level in every range of combat. And that's what I saw. It was like top-notch scrambles, top-notch takedown setups, top-notch kickboxing. Like everything about it was just creme de la creme. I mean, I can't get over how great of a fight this is. And I don't want to enter no recency bias is a thing. Like, do you have an idea where you would rank this for like your favorite title fights of all time?
I immediately, when I was watching this fight, I was watching the social media world as I was writing it out for the play-by-play, and I was seeing mostly positive reactions, incredible match of skill, and I noticed that it was an appreciation of the skill rather than the intensity and the violence and the action. It was more of a, wow, these are the best guys, and you can really see it. Like it's an exciting chess match. It's a great battle of inches. It's not a heavyweight chess match where they're very slowly doing something. No, it was really exciting to me. I put it in the category of fights that you might not remember this one completely, but this one jumps off the page. It was like 5 or 6 years ago. Tim Elliott fought Louis Smolka, and it was 3 rounds of absolute glorious grappling. It was scramble city. It was positional changes. It was I got you, you got me. It wasn't the highest level or anything like that, but it was one of those perfectly balanced fights. Like it looked like those Chinese kung fu movies where it looks like a dance more than an actual fight, kind of like that. This was that for me. This isn't like a best fight of the year, but it's you'll remember it and you'll appreciate it. You might not have the flash of the, oh my gosh, I remember Rory standing there and glaring at it, or Robbie's glaring at Rory at the end, and all of that. You might not have that memorable. You're going to remember, man, that was a great fight. So I think it was that for me.
Anyone else going to take a stab? Where will you rank this for your title fights? If you have an idea, if you thought about it at all.
It wasn't like a just bleed delight, but it was about as high level a fight as we've ever seen, just in terms of the skills and the game plans the fighters brought to the table. I mean, it was more exhausting than exhilarating. Like it was exhausting to watch, like in a good way, but just it was like an intellectually like rigorous exercise to watch, like the game of inches and milliseconds. Like I look forward to rewatching this fight the next time one of these guys fights either each other or anybody, but it didn't lend itself to a whole lot of gifts that you're going to see making the rounds, so it depends on what you're looking for. If you are a scholar and student of the martial arts, which I am not in particular, this might be the greatest title fight of all time. If you prefer a sensational finish or like a real blood and guts war where somebody digs deep, like, dude, nobody dug deep in this fight. Both these guys put out everything they had. Like there was nothing even too shocking. It was just a set of pleasant surprises that unfolded throughout the fight. Like it never disappointed.
Yeah, kind of using some of your criteria, Ben, for what you find to be a quality event. This is one where I felt like I learned a lot. Where just watching it, it was an intellectual exercise. Like I walked away feeling smarter. I felt like I'd gained something from an IQ standpoint by watching those two go at it and that chess battle play out. So yeah, I'm all about this fight, and I can't wait to rewatch this when it's time to do some future tape study. So, Kristen, anything you want to add before we move things on?
Nope, because I'm going to say something super hyperbolic, and I don't want to get caught up in recency bias.
Oh no! Let's say something hyperbolic so I could clip it and put it on social media.
Yeah, right. Next question, buddy.
I will say the most giftable moment was probably Volkanovski turning and shouting at Islam in the 4th round. That was probably if there's one big takeaway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was trash talking.
He was like calling him a bitch when he had his back. Yeah.
That was fun.
That was a lot of fun. All right, so let's keep things pushing here because we do have a co-main event to talk about where a title belt was introduced, a second title belt in the featherweight division. Yair Rodriguez is now the interim featherweight champion. So fellas and lady, tell me now, do you believe, I know we talked about this a little bit, but let's go in a bit more detail. After Rodriguez's performance against Josh Emmett, do you see any hope for him to beat Volkanovski?
I want to jump on this real quick because I have an extra take on it. I loved that this was an interim title fight. And here's why. The UFC probably, they stopped this like 5 or 6 years ago. Once upon a time had official number one contender fights that were for nothing other than, like, on Wikipedia, you can actually see number one contender, top contender fight, number one contender fight. And it was the official thing that the UFC would say before, this was before even the era of like the mid Fox era, where Dana would say, okay, the winner of era, Shogun, Machida, and Bader, where, it was something like that. We'll get the next title shot. This is the number one contender fight. This interim title fight was the best possible number one contender fight because it gave them both championship level purses and 20,000 extra dollars in the Reebok, or no, the Venom till, the compliance pay. It got them paid a little more, and I loved that because it was the same stakes. It's just they actually have a little more money, and I'm happy with that. But as for how it makes me feel, I forget who said it earlier. I think it might have been Duffy, about Rodriguez's chances. There is absolutely nothing that Yair can take away from the Makhachev fight to say, oh, I got this in the bag now because of Islam's performance. Absolutely nothing. I think if anything, his performance will make Volkanovski a little more cautious to wrestle than he would have before this fight, because I don't even remember Yair attempting a submission before this fight in the UFC. And that's something that he could have assumed he could just throw him around like Frankie Edgar did, and Volk could throw him around like Frankie Edgar did. So maybe it gives something Volkanovski extra to think about, but I still have Volkanovski like 50-44 when they fight.
Yeah. I mean, you can never count Yair Rodriguez out. And after a UFC event, UFC 284, that certainly invites people to jump in with a lot of superlatives, and I've stopped shy of a lot of them, I'll jump in with one superlative here. I think Yair Rodriguez right now might have the most diverse arsenal of finishing abilities, like offensive finishing abilities, that we've ever seen in high-level MMA. To find his equal, you go to like
Showtime at his prime.
That was literally the one I was going to come up with. 2012 Anthony Pettis, where he just had the ability to finish the fight from almost any position, any situation, at any moment, could just turn things on a dime in 5 seconds, irrespective of his opponent's abilities. It didn't matter that Gilbert Melendez had been one of the best grapplers in the lightweight division for years. Like, he just belly down armbarred him like this. It didn't matter that Donald Cerrone was impossible to stop. Like, he kicked him in the body so hard that like his intestines came out his butthole. That's Yair Rodriguez at this point. Like, it's a nearly unparalleled level. The thing that made his finish of Korean Zombie so incredible wasn't just the technique, because it looked almost accidental. It's that it changed the outcome of the fight had it gone for one more second. This wasn't DJ beating Horiguchi with 1 second left where he was already mopping the floor with him. Like, that's the perfect example of actually turning the outcome of a high-level fight on a dime. Because of that, you can never count him completely out as long as he's breathing. But stylistically, like Jay said, there's nothing I saw that gives him anything to take back to Valley Flow's striking and be like, okay, we need to do like the Islam game plan. That ain't it. So he still just got the Hail Mary chance, but it's one hell of a Hail Mary.
Do you guys know how much I want Edson Barboza to go on a run and fight Yair?
Oh my God, please. We need that.
He still got it. Like Bryce Mitchell threw him around and Giga just kicked him in the body a little harder, but he still got it.
Or Yair versus Giga. Like I'll take that any day.
Sure.
Yeah. So Kristen, maybe I'm looking at it differently. So I'm not looking at what looking at Makhachev, what he did against Volkanovski and trying to apply that to Rodriguez. I'm looking at what Rodriguez did to Emmett. What do you see there that he could apply against Volkanovski?
Yeah, I mean, I think because Yair is so crafty, you never know what's coming next. Like those body kicks that he was landing on Josh Emmett, like they had me doubled over in pain. Like I just couldn't imagine. And the first one, I think he landed on Josh Emmett, you could see the demeanor change almost immediately. So, I mean, that dude is like hammering these legs in there. So that's always a possibility. But then I think about Volkanovski's probably he's going to catch that kick. He's probably going to take him down. But then there's also the possibility of him threatening with these submissions and stuff like that. We saw a little bit of that in the Brian Ortega fight. We saw a little bit of that now in the Josh Emmett fight. So there's always a hint of danger when it comes to Yair Rodriguez, because you never know where he's going to go. He could spam you all day in the body with a kick, and then when you're doubled over, he's just going to follow up and blitz you with like 3 or 4 punches. You have no idea which way he's going to come. So, he has a chance. I don't want to write him off completely. I never try to do that with a fighter. I think this is one of those, it's an interesting puzzle for Volkanovski to try and solve. And as we've seen throughout his career, he's so good at making these adjustments. So while I would favor him in that fight, it's just interesting to see what he's going to be able to do to kind of counter just that element of surprise that Yair has, because you just never know which way Yair is going in these fights. And the more he keeps fighting, it seems like he's getting better. I mean, I think this was one of the most complete performances of Yair's career so far. And it's like it's starting to finally mix. Everything is meshing so much better than it should have a couple of fights ago, because before there was injuries, there was his little tiff with the UFC he had. I think he was briefly cut because he turned down a fight with Zabit, and that's another fight that I wish we could have got, but it is what it is. Zabit is retired, but now fast forward a couple of years, it seems like Yair is really putting it all together. So I think he has a chance. I still would favor Volkanovski, but again, it's that element of surprise almost everywhere. Striking, grappling, it's going to be somewhat difficult, but I think like he's always done before, Volk can make those adjustments and handle everything accordingly. I'd do favor Volkanovski in that fight as well, but I do think Yair, I would give him a better chance than a lot of other people would give, depending on what he can do in the opening seconds of that fight. If he can open up and establish some respect for a kick of any level, then I think the floodgates can potentially open for him. If he comes out and establishes a leg kick, gives Volkanovski something to think about. Even if he catches him trying to scoop down and catch it, well, it opens up the head kick. And we see Volkanovski is already shorter. So it's going to be less distance for that head kick to travel. And Yair already kicks to the head faster than a lot of people jab. So if any kick opens up, if the head kick opens up, well, that opens up the body kick. Like any kick on any level, if Yair can establish that with some semblance of consistency, or at least hard enough to make Volkanovski respect it, then the thread can be unraveled. And that would be essential to it all. And we did just see Islam Makhachev throw a head kick at Volkanovski, and he ate that. And I'm not saying that he could kick. I think Yair kicks harder than Islam Makhachev. I will say that.
And
he's
much faster.
Yeah, exactly. He's much quicker. So, I mean, he's eaten a head kick before, but I just don't know if a Yair Rodriguez head kick is survivable, I guess.
Yeah, and then on top of that, like he blocked it with one hand. He blocked it with one arm. Like I don't think you want to repeatedly take that. Makhachev wasn't spamming out head kicks. If Yair gets into any sort of flow, like you saw that one sequence where he landed with like 4 switch kicks to Emmett in a row. And Emmett was clearly like he looked like he died after that. He looked like a zombie the moment that last kick landed. If he's able to have a single sequence like that, and Volkanovski is doing that one arm block, that's probably a broken arm. And that changes the whole dynamic. That changes your ability to grab someone and take them down or drag them down in a clinch if you've got a broken arm. So, I mean, that kick obviously is the game plan for Rodriguez, but I think it gives him a much better opportunity than most people would acknowledge. either way, I can't wait for that fight. And while I would love to see Volkanovski and Makhachev fight again, I think the UFC will be doing the best thing for both divisions. Let them both move on and then bring it back together if the stars align. Will be my take, and it looks like everyone agrees with me. So that means you guys are right.
If there's an immediate rematch, that's crazy. It doesn't merit it. Like it doesn't merit it, and there's nothing new we gain from it. Say Volkanovski wins a 48-47 nail biter.
We got to do it a third time. Like
not even that, but we still don't have anything new to take from. Be like, yeah, they're evenly matched. Son of a gun.
But that makes an interim lightweight title available, and then we got all these belts on ESPN Plus.
At that time, Beneil Dariush should be skipped over, and Arnold Allen will be like, "Oh, what am I after two?"
Oh no! It'll be like Chandler versus McGregor for the interim lightweight title. That's what would happen. Yeah. That's what would happen.
That's what would happen.
Yeah. All right. So let's keep things pushing here. Beyond the non-undefeated record, why is Jack Della Mandela not getting the shine of other flashy up-and-comers? And I know I botched that last name. I always botch his last name. I'm not even going to try again.
I'm proud of you.
He's not quite as memorable. Obviously, Khamzat Chimaev has a certain like star quality. He did from the moment he landed in the UFC in 2020. Just the perfect mix of Khabib's kind of like unintentionally hilarious broken English and Conor McGregor's like just quick-witted arrogance. Like he has star power written all over him. Shavkat Rakhmonov doesn't quite have that, but he does have the biggest fur hat in the UFC. Then just cuts a very memorable figure with like just his big bright teal Kazakhstan flag and his giant Ushanka. Jack Della Maddalena doesn't have any of that. All he has is ridiculous dominance in one of the divisions where it's supposed to be hardest to do that. I think people are going to have to start paying attention. He's put away everything, like every challenge put in his path with similar alacrity to Rakhmonov and Chimaev, and it's just time for him to take on a top 10 fighter. What I really want to know is, though, who did that to his nose, and why is he not in the UFC? Because in 4 fights in the UFC and 1 on the Contender Series, people barely laid a finger on this man, and yet he comes in looking like end-stage Arlovsky meets Mike Perry with that schnoz, dude. Whoever did that to Jack Della Maddalena needs to get signed with a quickness.
He'll like Alex Pereira, Jack, like that. Just chase him to another sport and do it all over again.
Gonna find out it's like his brother or something. I mean, he has a brother that fought, but yeah, it's the Mark Hughes of Australia. Yeah.
What he did, but straight up though, what he did to Randy Brown. I had him. I expected he was going to beat Randy Brown probably by knockout, maybe second or so rounds, just because I know what Randy Brown is capable of. I know how he fights. I know that when he actually fights long to his advantage, as he has been doing lately, he can do some really good things, and he did exactly the right thing, and that's what was so messed up. That's why. I think what Della Maddalena did was so impressive, because Randy Brown did exactly the right thing, and he got just all of things. He got knocked out and submitted. Just oh my gosh, and it was quick. Like if Randy Brown goes down, it's not just getting lamped. It's not just walking down and getting blasted. It's Vicente Luque after 10 minutes of kneeing him in the face. It's Nico Price when Nico Price is going like this and just so happens to go like this off his back and do that weird thing when he's flailing. It's not just some quick thing. Besides that, the upside down hammer fist that Nico threw. So yeah, man, I really want to see what's next for him, because I liked everything I saw. I liked that he didn't force the knockout when he could have jumped on top and punched him out. I liked that he was able to go, oh, I can just choke him. I got it. Boom, done. He didn't go, I have to do it this way or anything like that, even though he probably blew up a ton of parlays because of that. I really like what he has to offer. I think Luque is too early, but holy smokes, do I want to see that fight.
Yeah,
He's 26.
that's scary.
Like here's the upside is that Luque might knock his nose straight, but man, that'd be a fun fight.
Loses a lot of character if
Yeah.
you knock his nose straight. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Leave it how
we
it
love
is.
Olaf. Why do we love Olaf Alfonso? Besides his crazy wackadoo wars in WEC, it's
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
having like what I meant Andre Arlovski, and it's like his nose is on the other side of his face. He's like sniffing his shoulder. It's like that's a whole lot of character. Sorry, Kristen, I just had to
Dude,
get that off my
He
chest.
snores when he's awake. Like his nose so fucked up.
It's terrible. Oh, sorry. Hold on. I'm sorry.
It happens. This is it happens all the time. I'm surprised.
Somebody's excited. Look at that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I thought you were never coming home. This is great.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, he's about to get fed. That's what it is. Now, before
That's
it was.
less of an interruption than my kids. So
No, but he's so loud. Hey, shh, shh, shh. All right, here we go. Oh my God, the folks at home, they're gonna have a laugh at that. Anyway,
3, 2, 1.
as far as I don't know why Jack Della Maddalena is not getting the shine. I also wondered if it had to do something with his personality, because obviously he's very, very good when it comes to fighting. Like, he's putting guys away, and Randy Brown was his toughest test so far in the UFC. And for the beginning part of that fight, I think, like you said, Jay, Randy Brown was doing everything perfectly. And then as soon as Jack made the read, closed the distance, got in range, and just fired off that missile, I was like, oh, I think this might be it. And of course, it opened that finish. Now, he may not be the most boisterous personality. And I don't know if you're in that group also, where a lot of people are like,
it's fine.
a lot of
It's
people are
cool.
like, when you're in your post-fight interview and they're asking, who do you want to fight next? And they're like, oh, just give me anybody in the top 15. No, call someone out, make it known that you want to fight Vicente Luque, you want to fight Muslim Saliakov, you want to fight Michelle Pereira. Somebody, call them out specifically. Don't just say that you want someone in the top 15. You got to call your shot if you want to be in that group. And if you're not willing to say it, then that's a problem. Of course, you are one to watch out for. I absolutely love watching Jack Della Maddalena fight, but at the end of the day, if you're going to make a case for, hey, I'm going to be that up-and-coming guy to get in the top 15, then the top 10, then the top 5, you got to call these guys out. Now, I can appreciate backstage, he said, oh, yeah, get me Vicente Luque. It'll be a banger. Absolutely. But you have to realize every second on that microphone is worth at least 1,000 fans. They're watching you, and they're seeing where you want to lay your path in the UFC. They might not follow you backstage in these media interviews. They're waiting to see what you're going to do after you just submitted Randy Brown. You just knocked out and submitted Randy Brown. So say it right then and there. So maybe if he got a little bit more voice as to where he wanted to go, who he wanted next, I think maybe he might be taken seriously. And that's just more so about like the casual demographic. Of course, we are going to watch him anyway because he produces some highlight reel finishes. I don't think that we're ever going to stop watching him and his progression in the UFC. But if you want everybody else on board, you got to start talking your shit.
Yeah, especially if you say it backstage, like just say it in, like, I get it if you don't say it at all and that's just not your personality, that's fine, but you don't save the gold for like the media nerds in the back, like
right.
For us in the scrum, like don't save that for that. You gotta voice that out to the people.
Especially, he is the only fighter on the card from Perth. They were going absolutely bananas for him. They were louder for him than for Volkanovski.
Period.
Right.
They were eating out of his hand. He could have called for anything, and they would have made it sound like the most reasonable request in the world. He could have been like, Conor McGregor, you're taking everything I work for.
Yeah.
Like, Dana, I'm gonna.
To Leon Edwards, let's do it.
Could have had
like,
his, like, you know, like Della Maddalena's going to give it to you. Like,
like I understand that fighters don't follow the landscape as closely as we do because we're crazy people. But and I think, didn't he say he was going to go on vacation and then figure things out? Isn't that what I think that's what he said?
Mm-hmm.
if he had a handler, maybe that's a job that fighters need, a handler, someone that's a finger on the pulse, they know exactly where to go, what to do, and how to arrange things. Say, hey, Sean, or hey, Michelle Pereira or Pajeda, I heard that you just lost a fight in Sean Brady. Let's do this thing in March. I'll knock your block off. What a fight that would be. JDM and Michelle Pereira? Pajeda? I screwed up with that because of that.
He needs like Walid Ismail to translate for him, even though he doesn't even speak Portuguese. He just needs like the Walid Ismail like anger translator.
Just snatch the mic and just like, hey, he's gonna destroy all of you motherfuckers. That's what he needs. Like I was saying like MMA needs more people like that. We need like a Bundini Brown, or what's the guy that Pacquiao always has, Boo Boy. Like we need those guys.
We need the hype men.
Yeah, we need the Flavor Flav for MMA.
And the crazy thing is, it's not like I would roll my eyes if he did that. It's because he's backing up everything that he does in the octagon. So if you start adding in your promos and your post fight, I think you'd be solid.
Especially in Perth at home. Get your guy to get you excited. Oh yeah, missed opportunity. UFC 284 missed opportunities. I'm feeling that.
Yeah, I was calling it UFC 284 $40 a champ. That was my name for it. But all right, so let's keep things pushing here. We got 10 seconds on the clock, and we are going to do quick hits. So first up, let's see. I will I'll pass it to you, Kristen. How did you feel about Mark Goddard's point deduction for Alonzo Minifield's result in a draw?
I think it was warranted, and it definitely was the right call. I know a lot of people were pissed that it resulted in the draw, but it affected the fight. Jimmy Crute was 1,000% going to get that takedown. Alonzo Minifield did it before, so if not then, that was the perfect opportunity to do it.
Absolutely. What's the point of rules if they're not enforced?
You're right.
Why even bother?
Wait, did you guys see? I don't know who it was. I don't remember the fight, but I think it was Mark Goddard. He's like, you did it twice now. The next time I'm going to do a point deduction. So I'm like, does that mean everyone gets 2 fouls and then the third?
Oh, the grunt shot? Was it the second grunt shot?
I think that's what it was. Was it in the Koulibaly fight?
I think it was because it was a spinning back kick, and then it was another one. Then he's like, I know it was an accident, but
So I'm like,
I really mean it this time.
You're killing this man.
Exactly.
It's like a long running thing. Like I think Ben Folks says you say this all the time. Like
Dundasso.
And or Chad, one of the two would say like you're allowed 2 fouls. Mm-hmm. Like you get 2 fouls, and sometimes you get to do 3. The same foul twice. And 2 separate fouls twice. Like sometimes, that needs to stop. You commit a foul, penalized for it. Simple as that.
Especially fence grabs, because fence grabs are never accidental.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes. Right. Absolutely. All right. So let's see. Let's keep things pushing here. Jay, was Clayton Rodriguez win over Shannon Ross stopped early?
No, because of what was going to happen afterwards. Like I think if there was any sign of Ross turning a corner, but no, I'm okay with it.
All right, Ben. Got one for you. Where am I? Okay, which UFC 284 undercard fighter's performance impressed you the most?
Jack Jenkins. Don Shainis is a better opponent than his record makes it look like, and Jenkins pretty much did what he wanted to for 15 minutes. Looks like the real deal. Even with that Canadian passport he's got on top of his head.
All right, Jay, please ask me a question so I don't sound like a crazy person.
So let's see. On the main card, I think it was the second fight, which doesn't have a name. The obligatory heavyweight slobber knocker, as it were. Justin Tafa knocked Parker Porter's block off in like 66 seconds. 2 knockouts in a row. As Justin Tafa, bad man, 29 years young, who is young in the heavyweight division. Has he turned a corner? Is he the guy?
No. He did what Justin Tafa is supposed to do, and that's knock people out. They put striker versus grappler. Grappler got knocked out. One of the only 2 results that was going to happen. So, yeah, this is not a come to Jesus moment for anyone in the heavyweight division.
And I take exception to your characterization of Tafa's knockout of Porter as knocking his block off. Parker Porter doesn't have any blocks. He looks like somebody drew a human being doing nothing but like tracing cups and bowls.
So like he drew a snowman and then went, okay, we're gonna
Exactly.
make a man out of him.
It's like put a snowman in grappling gloves and
Exactly.
throw him out there on the mats and see what happens. All right.
I think we're gonna need to see how he does against, like, I don't know, Chase Sherman and Yorgan de Castro before we really can find out how he does.
You just
wait,
stirring
he
up
already
the,
fought-
stirring,
he got
stirring up
knocked
the
out by
bottom of
Yorgan
that
de Castro.
bowl, aren't you, man?
Well, Josh Parisian's gonna need to fight after this weekend.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be in the UFC.
I love Josh Parisian, so I'm not making fun of him.
I love
Yeah.
Josh Parisian too.
Okay.
I mean,
All right.
And not because of his story. That's another bonus, double plus good.
All right. So I got a minute on the clock, a minute in which we're probably going to disrespect and run over without any sort of respect for it at all. But let's get started. So open to anyone who wants to jump in this first. Jose Aldo won his boxing debut this weekend and may be getting matched up against Floyd Mayweather later in the year. What do you think about it?
I think that Jose Aldo, an 0-0 fighter, knocking out an 0-3. I know he didn't knock him out. He just beat him up. Beat an 0-3 fighter up and got 2 belts because of it. And now he's rewarded a fight with Floyd Mayweather, an exhibition. Like, I don't feel good about any of this. Because you know what's going to happen. Aldo's going to take it seriously. And do we want to see Jose Aldo knocked out in an exhibition by Floyd Mayweather? I mean,
and he definitely said he was going to take it seriously.
Yes.
He said, like, I am going to go out there and box him for real. I don't care what he's doing.
And we've been seeing what's been happening with Floyd versus Ryzen fighters who take it seriously and hit Floyd. And Floyd goes, okay, all right. Bam, and then they're done.
but see, Jose Aldo watched like those fights, like the Nasukawa fight, and he took the wrong lessons from it. He's like, okay, so I need to do that, only not get punched in the face.
Or I can hit him harder than this little guy can.
Yeah.
God.
It's like that one free shot. I'm going to put everything I got in it. Like,
it's like Johnny Knoxville fighting Butterbean, and Butterbean's like, come on, give me one. And he gets one, and then he gets knocked out in the department store.
And then he sits up and he's like, is Butterbean okay? That's one of the only times the Jackass really, really made me laugh.
Kristen King, Jose Aldo boxing.
It
How do you
looks
feel
like you
about
got
that?
something to say.
Nope.
Okay, well,
Don't have anything to say. I think it's just another stop on the Mayweather circus. That is, I'm not retired, but I'm still going to box and get these YouTubers and these smaller stars. I think this was a big one, I guess, for Jose Aldo, at least, like as far as name value is concerned. But other than that, I think we all know how the fight's going to go. So that's why I don't really put too much effort into thinking about it.
See,
I'm just glad he's getting paid. That's like,
that too.
He's probably going to pick up a nice hefty bag. Like Jose Aldo is probably one of the better names that is available for like the Mayweather Griffiths tour. That's still out there. So that I'm okay with it, I guess. I mean, it's better than, granted, he's probably going to wipe the floor with Jeremy Stevens if that fight takes place on the Masvidal's card.
It is happening.
Yeah, get the bag. Just get the bag. At least he's not planning an insurrection right now. That's sort of the silver lining. Like democracy might stand in Brazil if you're busy boxing. So
it's gonna be like the scene in Endgame when Jose Aldo's gonna be like, you took everything from me, and Floyd's gonna be like, I don't even know who you are.
Yeah. It's like I'm reminded of the quote in the god awful Street Fighter movie where I think Chun-Li was like confronting Bison. And she's like so mad about like her life is ruined, and he's like you know, the day that Bison graced your village, it changed your life and you'll remember it forever. For me, it was Tuesday.
It was Tuesday.
So, yep. Great movie. One of the best bad movies out there, Street Fighter. All right, so let's keep things pushing here because it's time to move on to the greatest title segment in all of media history. I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons. Will we share something that surprised us or ironically did not since we last met? Start again with our guest, Kristen. What's your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
Man, so earlier this week, I think we got a hint from Lerone Murphy that something was wrong with his fight against Nathaniel Wood. And lo and behold, Nathaniel Wood had to withdraw because he was injured. And when you guys see this injury, for me, it's nothing. Again, what did you just say? It's another Tuesday? Yeah, pretty much. It's another Tuesday for me. A lot of people are kind of grossed out by blood and split open body parts and stuff like that. So Nathaniel Wood was in wrestling practice and he banged his knee on like a wooden part of the mat. And now, as someone who doesn't grapple or anything like that, like, is that supposed to be there?
No, it was
like,
it was a
wooden trim.
Like a frame kind of.
Oh, because
Yeah.
I thought it was like an accident at home. Like he just
No,
I cut my arm
Yeah.
pretty bad on something at home like that years ago. But
yeah, he said he was training, and he posted the video of him grappling, and he falls off of the mat, and he hits something that is like a wooden trim, like I guess alongside the mat. I can't really tell in the video; it's pretty grainy.
what the hell type of setup is that?
That's what I said. So I'm like, what the hell happened? And then he showed it himself on
British
crutches.
gyms that don't expect anybody to wrestle.
British wrestling gyms.
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
guess. So yeah, he has a pretty big cut on his right knee, I believe it is, his right knee, and he had to get stitched up. And that's kind of unfortunate because I know Nathaniel Wood has had like a series of fight cancellations, some of which were his fault, others were his opponents. They were injured, they just couldn't get, they couldn't get to the fight, stuff like that. And so his time at bantamweight, he was one of those big, like, up and coming prospects. And it seemed like it was just riddled with fight cancellation. So he couldn't really get anything going. Of course, every time he appeared in the octagon, it was very exciting. He gave us a show. But then he moved up to featherweight. He said, I wanted to be more active. And it started to look like that. Like, he looked very, very good in his last two appearances. And this one against Lerone Murphy, which was my under the radar fight for UFC 286 next month, that's off the table. And it sucks because I really want Nathaniel Wood to get some momentum going. It seems like every time he goes like 3 steps forward, he takes at least 6 back. And it's just like the guy can't catch a break. So if you guys are interested in seeing what that looks like, I have written about his knee on bloodyelbow.com. So you guys can look at that if you want to see what it looks like. I gave you guys a little graphic warning just because I have to, like, for legal reasons. But
And she is underselling it. From the right angle, it's a horizontal cut, and it looks like Dr. Frankenstein like stitched a lower leg to an upper leg.
Yeah.
there
Like,
you go.
dude needs to stop training at the 84 lumber. Is the truth.
Yeah. It's
Like,
yeah, it's like he was training in a razor blade factory or something. Like
Seriously. Training with Jason Voorhees or something and got hit with the damn with the
you
machete.
gotta, like if Freddy Krueger gets you in a heel hook, you gotta tap.
Yeah.
Oh my
Just tap
God.
right away.
I'd say the same
Just-
thing about Leatherface. If he gets you with that freaking chainsaw, that's over. It looks like a chainsaw got him in that leg. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
look
that looked
up.
wild.
Yeah.
That was right up your alley, Kristen. I know you were excited to see that picture go across your timeline. All right, Ben, I'm going to turn it over to you. What's your I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment this week?
I mean, I'm gonna talk about Dan Hooker's grenade throwing, and unless we want to take that last, if you think it's going to branch off into something else.
Which, by the way, talk about unfortunate injuries.
Oh,
Broke
yeah.
his
Dan-
all
Yeah,
of
broke
this,
his
I
hand.
think.
Yep.
Yeah.
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 Dan Hooker, UFC featherweight / lightweight contender, early in the morning, North America time, put out a somewhat vague tweet that I'll just read verbatim. Forgive my language. Forgive my Kiwi here. Quote, dumb cunt thinks he can fly to Australia, hire a nurse to give him an IV, and we won't find out. Cheating dog. Obviously, that blew up the MMA Twitter timeline like you wouldn't expect, even though it came in at like 1:30 in the morning my time, which for me is lunchtime. Over the course of the next 8 to 10 hours, the implication was confirmed. He was saying that about Islam Makhachev. And that accusation has been echoed by a number of other Australian and New Zealand fighters who, train with or somehow plugged into the scene there. Alexander Volkanovski talked a little bit about it on the MMA Hour this morning, and he was relatively gracious. He just clearly is looking forward to whatever's next for him. But the IVs have been banned in mixed martial arts for almost a decade now. Not just because they allow you to hydrate unnaturally fast, but because they can be used to dilute and mask actual performance-enhancing drugs in urine and blood samples. So, they've been banned. If Makhachev did it, trouble's a brewing, and we're going to have to rejigger the pound-for-pound list yet once again. That's going to be the news of the week until something else happens. That's big.
So, something else will happen. Something else will happen. I mean, we'll maybe this should be my I'm not surprised. but the changes in the UFC contracts should be the number one news in the sport right now, but it'll get brushed over by a silly tweet or something. So this is one of those things where it should be taken a lot more seriously. It should be a bigger deal, but it'll pass, I believe. Jay, I'm not surprised Mr. Falcon's moment.
Well,
I will
say the only reason that when I was covering news for Sherdog this past week, did not write about the contract changes, it's because I did not have and I could not get a copy of the contract to be able to break down the pieces, and I didn't feel comfortable basically having a report based on what was written. Now I know it's accurate. I'm not questioning the veracity and the bloody elbows investigative reporting, but for me and my own due diligence, I can't look at the contract and say, okay, here's what the story was. So I would just have to write a news report about somebody else's interpretation. I didn't feel comfortable doing that, that's why I was disappointed to not cover it for Sherdog, because it's a major story. Some of the things that the restrictions and the additions to contract time and the pieces and the waiver for the waiver for class action suits and other things like that, some of those are probably unenforceable if they were actually challenged in court, but that means you have to take the UFC to court, and good luck with that. So that's a really ugly situation. I'm very much looking forward to the IV situation. I am not at all embarrassed to say that about 45 minutes of my day today, I went through the entire Getty photographs of the main event and weigh-in times or weigh-in spots of UFC 284, looking for all the photographs of Islam Makhachev to see if there were any injection points. I was unable to see any, but that doesn't mean they weren't there or I wasn't looking in the right spot, because they might not have been here. Or here. Yeah. They might have been somewhere else up, Anyway, this sport, guys, is just, it runs you ragged sometimes.
He called it a sport.
as some people know, I work with the Fight Finder team, that is an international group of individuals that we cover the all of the happenings of every fight that's ever happened in the history of our sport, give or take. Well, back in March 2022, I wrote an article about an individual who impersonated the head of an organization in Kyrgyzstan called Falco FC. Now, Falco FC is actually it's probably the premier league in Kyrgyzstan. It's a big feeder to ACA, to Fight Nights Global. A lot of the fighters in the region for CIS fighters, Commonwealth Independent States, the Tajikistans and those regions, a lot of them fight there because there aren't a ton of options to work with. And Falco FC was a big enough organization to be able to house them, run regular events, and have a platform that was large enough that people, you could watch the fights on YouTube. So it wasn't that big of a thing. So last March, somebody wrote in impersonating this guy because the head of the organization has some clout. He's a big name in the sport over there. So to try and push things through, they tried to fake stuff. So we ended up essentially praising the actual person because he had been doing good things for the sport in the area. But this is all alleged. This is all report. These are not confirmed. These are allegations. There are multiple sources to Sherdog have informed us that actually the head of the organization itself, is not as above board as everybody expected. And it turns out fighters have been stiffed. Their results have been hidden. If a fighter wants to, if a home country fighter loses to a foreign fighter, the fight will be scrapped from the record and we will have no idea it existed. So it's like the fighter from Kyrgyzstan loses to a Russian, we might not ever know. And that's bad. That's bad. So this is what I can confirm. Over this weekend, the head of the organization, the guy who we spoke once highly of, and the organization itself have deleted all traces of their existence on social media, like Instagram accounts with hundreds of thousands of followers and regular posts have been deleted. They've not been replaced and changed, or they didn't change their name or do anything like this. And the reports are that the head of the organization is wanted by many people in the area for his alleged criminal offenses and fraud and money taking. And allegedly, he has fled the country. He tried to host events in Kazakhstan, in the region. That failed. Now, apparently, he will be traveling to, he has tried to take shelter in Brazil to run Falco FC in Brazil and see if he can run the organization from there. So this is the latest rumor scuttlebutt reports from multiple fairly legitimate sources of absolute crazy shenanigans about one of the actual supposed good guys in the sport is actually way worse than some of the others that we think are not very nice.
It's like the Gus Fring of MMA.
I am not surprised, Mr. Falcons.
Wow. And you actually called it a sport. You called this a sport. Just like, wow, what's wrong with us that we keep getting ourselves involved with this shit? All right. Well, I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment questions sport and legitimacy, but in a much more lighthearted way. Deontay Wilder, the former champion boxer, he has challenged Francis Ngannou on, I think, the Trill Boxing Talk podcast. He threatened, not threatened. He challenged Francis Ngannou to two fights, one in boxing and one in MMA, and he also offered to do at least one of the bouts in Africa, and saying that would be a great thing for both sports and for just fight fans in general. So I would love to see that. You guys know that that's the fight that if Ngannou was going to leave the UFC to box, that is the fight for me. That's the one I've been calling for since the day before forever. Yes, please. Let's do it. And especially if Wilder tries himself at MMA, don't think it goes well for him.
Better
but
box
I appreciate
first.
I appreciate you having the guts to throw that out there, and hopefully it becomes a reality. And man, they will both get so paid off of that. Let's make that happen. All right, so we've got yet another fight night card to sort of distract us from the fine action that we saw Saturday. So let's talk about some fights we probably don't care about. UFC Fight Night 219. It's like UFC Vegas 73,000 or something.
You know what number it is?
I was trying to be a gentleman because Kristen's here. UFC Vegas 69. Oh,
I
I've
knew
been
you were
waiting to
going
say
to do
that.
this.
Oh,
I
wait.
knew you were going to do it.
Oh wait, well not. I'm a wink at my wife and be like, UFC Vegas 69 is happening this weekend. So what are your plans? But anyway, wow, I hope she doesn't see this. I'm so gonna get killed. Anyway, and Kristen, do not text her or anything and let her know that I that I said that. Andrade and Blanchfield. A quick replacement was originally supposed to be Talia Santos, but she is having visa issues and can't make it into the United States. So Andrade, former world champion, is stepping in her place. Is this the worst fight card on paper of the year so far?
Yes, and of several years. Last the fight night card 2 weeks ago was bad enough with all of the road to UFC finals on it that just almost nobody knew of these fighters or let alone cared. But at least that card was full of fighters that probably aren't UFC material, where this one is full of fighters that are known not to be. There are like 3 fighters on this card that are on 3 fight losing streaks that would have been automatically cut by the UFC of just 5 or 6 years ago. And one of them's in the co-main event. It's like, this one is just unbelievably bad. And the one decent fight on it, the main event, was thrown together at short notice. So whatever result we get isn't going to settle the title picture in that division the way it could have, or teach us the things about the fighters that it could have. I mean, if Andrade walks in and just lamps Blanchfield, who had basically no time to prepare for her and was preparing for a completely different fighter physically and stylistically, like, does that really tell us that much about Blanchfield? What if Andrade goes in there and just gasses out horribly in 2 rounds and gets finished late? She fought 4 weeks ago. That might have something to do with it. So even the good part of this card sucks.
Yeah, like this is This is a hard one to justify sitting in front of the TV all day if there isn't a paycheck attached to it, gentlemen. You know, so I'm sorry. Like, you guys gotta. I ain't watching it live.
I'm genuinely curious the UFC strategy as I really sit and think about this, because yes, the UFC is obligated to produce 42 shows, including 20 something fight night shows on ESPN Plus. This is one of those shows. And it's content, and it's once the UFC reaches that quota, it gets the money. It's like a basketball player that has to play so many games a year. If they make so many starts or if they make so many appearances, they'll clear the contract, and that's it. But here's the problem. We are almost towards the end of the UFC on ESPN era in terms of what's next and how are we negotiating contracts going forward. So we're no longer really in the comfortable place of like, once you get married, you can get fat because you don't have to impress anybody anymore. Because we're going to have to deal with the UFC is going to look at potential suitors who will say, okay, but 4 months ago, you put on a product that you couldn't genuinely sell to anybody on purpose. And yes, it was ravaged by injury. And the UFC can say, well, we didn't know we'd lose our main event in a main card fight in Tyler Santos and Mowgli Benitez fighting Jim Miller. So the two best fights on the card are two fights that have no relevance, as much as little relevance as they could have had, because they were put together on extremely short notice. What happens if Jim Miller gets beaten up by Alexander Hernandez in the 3 minutes of cardio that Hernandez has? We're not going to get as much as if they fight and do something different. What happens if Andrade gets tired? All the things that Ben said. It's not a learning card. It's not anything besides content, but it's not a good kind of content. It's the kind of content where if you take away the main event fighters, the fighters on the roster, the other, 21 fighters on the card have like an even UFC record, give or take, like 500 in the UFC, which even in this era of we're signing too many people from the Contender Series and we're keeping too many fighters on too long, that's not a good thing. And I'm really concerned and curious about this. I shouldn't be concerned because I'm media, but I'm concerned because I'm a consumer of the product and I have to work this card, where I have to look and go, all right, it's time to devote 15 minutes plus 15 minutes of prep time. Time to devote 30 minutes to Clayton Carpenter versus Juan Camilo Ronderos, who shouldn't be in the UFC because he, what, Ben?
You're saying he blew his opportunity?
That's correct. It's, yeah, anyway.
This dude popped for cocaine.
Yes, sir.
In his UFC debut, and they brought him back. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah.
He showed up. He missed weight by 3 pounds.
Yep.
Got finished in like 30 seconds by David Dvorak. Then test positive for cocaine afterwards, and the UFC brought him back. Like, he's from Colombia. Why'd you have to go to Las Vegas to find cocaine?
I don't know. I don't know who's on the call on Saturday, but I pray to God we get this fight is brought to you by our sponsor, Cocaine Bear. For that fight specifically, I'd lose my mind.
That would be lovely.
Okay, that would make it all worth it.
Then this best card of the year. Yeah. If that happens, best card every year.
Do you guys
bring back Mike Goldberg to call that one?
Because he would sell the shit out of that line. He would sell it. Okay, so now we're talking about the quality of the card. Remember, this was supposed to be headlined by Marlon Vera and Corey Sandhagen. So are we still of the same mind that this card would be not as good without that main event? Or do you still think it would have been like a bad card?
It still would have been a bad card. It just would have been a boxing card.
Like
it would have been
heavy,
just it would have been just like the pay-per-view this past weekend. You put this fantastic fight at the top and the rest will figure itself out.
And they wouldn't have brought in Andrade to replace Santos in that case.
Right.
It truly would have been a one fight card.
Exactly. And I mean,
as opposed to now a half fight card.
Exactly. I like the new main event. It surprised me, obviously, in that division. I think eventually Erin Blanchfield was going to be thrown into like the deep waters of that division. And I think they were kind of testing her toe out with the Tyler Santos fight. Actually, I thought it was going to be a very intriguing fight because we know how Tyler Santos is on the ground. I think that would have been really fun to see her against Erin Blanchfield. But now we have someone.
She's going to punch her in the face a lot.
Yeah, she's no joke. Jessica Andrade, man. And I love that she's like this 2-division wonder. Like, homegirl is just like, give me a title shot, strawweight, flyweight. I don't care.
Like, I don't care where.
Yeah, she just bounces between weights and makes it look easy, which is that much more scary. Like, she's doing this to girls 10 pounds heavier, and then she'll drop down and she'll do it to those girls too. It's crazy. But you know how I am, guys. I'm a consumer of the product. I'm very much a optimistic person. So I look forward to these fights, obviously. I will say, though, the placement for the co-main event is super weird. Like, you have Jim Miller, somebody who has made UFC history in their last fight, and he's going to do it again. Oh, sorry. He may do it again because I believe this is going to be his 25th Octagon win if he gets it done against Alexander Hernandez. Why not put that in the co-main event? Why are we putting heavyweights?
Heavyweights and light heavyweights.
2 title challengers on this card.
Yeah.
Lena Landsberg and Oben St. Preux both fought for UFC titles.
Exactly.
And they're on the undercard.
Yep.
Hernandez was once a top 10 guy.
Yeah.
It's like it's just, I think it's something that Ben, you or Keith said on the preview show about who is the person in charge of not matchmaking, but in terms of the card placement, because it truly doesn't make sense anymore. Like, okay, Lena Landsberg, Mayra Bueno Silva, not a very sexy fight card, but you know what? They're the only other ranked fighters on this stupid card besides the 2 in the main event.
Yeah.
Like,
that's got to mean something.
Like,
it should
why
mean
is
something.
like the Brandon Royval fight? Crap, who is he fighting? He's fighting somebody good. Brandon Royval's fighting. He's fighting Mateus Nicolau, a top 5 fight, and it's buried on the prelims of an upcoming fight card.
Because fuck the flyweights.
Yeah.
Like, if you're trying to make it sexy, if the UFC had any care in trying to trump Bellator, put Hussein Askabab up in the main card, because then if he beats Jamal Emmers, he's a 24-0 fighter in a major organization who can then beat Yaroslav Amosov's sexy undefeated record. It's guys, UFC. I don't call me because I don't know if they'd conflict of interest, but call me. We'll talk.
Well, I'm looking for work, so call me.
Yeah.
But I'm like this is a sort of card where like it just feels unnecessary to have outside of fulfilling television contracts. That's really it. Like we should be continuing the Volkanovski and Makhachev discussion. We should be anticipating Yair Rodriguez trying to unify the belt. We should be talking about all the things that came from, and frankly, a grossly top heavy card on Saturday. We should be still reveling in that as opposed to moving on to a product that's quite frankly inferior. Yeah. So I said I wouldn't watch it live. I probably will because I'm an idiot. But if you have more intelligence than me, which probably isn't very difficult, don't watch it live. Yeah. So looks like my daughter has now decided to make her parents. So that's probably going to do it for this edition of the Living Death Show. Big shout out to Kristen for once again joining us. Can't wait to have you back. And of course, like I probably just need to like call you more so I don't have to bring you on the show as an excuse to talk to you. And of course, Ben and Jay every week holding it down. You can find their work on Sherlock.com. You can catch Kristen on Bloody Elbow, and you can find me on MMA On Point. So like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. Stay beautiful, stay positive, and stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.